Hello and welcome back to Core Finance. I'm Matt Brown. I'm joined here today by Sean Attwood, who is a stress management coach. So thank you very much, first off, for coming on to Core Finance for the first time.
Thank you very much for having me, Matt.
Well, let's hope this is going to be a stress-free interview, and hopefully our viewers will be able to have some good takeaways away from this to help them with certainly trading. And trading can be a very stressful environment. But let's start off with your background and how you've got into stress management.
Sure. Over the last 10, 12 years or so, I had a company. We built up a company from scratch. Got quite successful. And over the course of that company, there was always pressures. There was always your brain moving in different directions. And there was always new things that we wanted to learn. So I went in and I looked at a lot of different modalities for achieving the goals that I wanted to achieve. After that company got sold, began learning trading, practicing, understand a lot about the fear and anxiety in trading decisions, a lot of the risk management aspects of that. And then over the last 2 years, 3 years, I've found 3 techniques that have really, really helped to balance all areas of my life. And actually, in trading, it works brilliantly well because of the nature of your trading habits.
And you touched on fear and anxiety, and two of the things that I always hear is kind of fear and greed. This is what drives traders. In any other point in life, if you look at fear and you look at greed and anxiety and this need and want to increase your wealth, that creates stress.
Yes.
And it will create stress. And it's probably very rare that you'll get a trader that doesn't experience that emotions and doesn't feeling stress as a result of that. So what should one be doing when one is stressed? I mean, is it a case of, if I'm stressed, I shouldn't be trading?
No, I think, well, that's a tough one because you don't want to go into a trade where you're going to abandon your plan. You don't want to go in where you're not going to be focused and you're not going to be disciplined. Mark Douglas set it up as in his book Trading in the Zone, set it up as a great paradox. You want to achieve these things, but you're afraid to achieve these things. And so you want to achieve these things, but you're afraid to achieve these things. And those two combinations are what actually create the stress. What can be done is there's a lot of emotional release, there's a lot of stress release, and it's difficult to remember that while you're actually in the middle of a plan. But if you can prepare ahead of time, then you can stick to your plan and you won't be trading your last trade. You'll be able to actually formulate what you want to accomplish and then go forward with it.
And being stressed and trading, what's the downside of that? What can happen if you are stressed?
Well, I mean, I think we've all gotten into a trade earlier than the signal told us. We've left the trade on longer than the signal told us to leave it on. We've deviated from the plan. We haven't listened to the plan at all and actually taken a trade just because there was something else that looked like it might go a bit further. And all of those are losing habits, but they have nothing to do with the market. They have nothing to do with your trade. And they actually really have nothing to do with your plan. They have to do with you, fully you, and your mental game going into it. So looking at it, what you want to do is ensure that you're coming at it without a fear and without an anxiety, but also without a recklessness and a bravado. So you want to approach it disciplined, focused, and that's what you can do when you release the stress and you release any of the emotional strain or memories from a past trade where you may not have won, or even a past trade where you actually traded big. All of those can lead to a skewing of your decision-making capabilities.
And how is the brain operating? How's it working when I'm making these decisions or I'm getting stressed if the trade isn't going as I'd expected, or maybe it's deviating from my plan? What's going on in my brain, or a typical investor's brain?
Sure. Well, there's a couple of things that are happening at the same time. First off, you have a left and a right hemisphere to your brain. You've probably heard this, the brain dominance theory. A lot of traders actually have to take Myers-Briggs tests to figure out whether they're left brain or right brain dominant. And the difference between the two is your right brain is creative, it's intuitive, it's emotional. Your left brain is logical, a lot less intuitive, but more factual. It really wants to have a reason behind everything it does. And if you're responding from either of those, then there's going to be something that derails it. So if you're an eminently logical person and there's a fear of losing more than you would put on in risk, then all of a sudden your brain goes haywire. You're not able to make a coherent decision because the wrong brain is working. So ideally what you want is you want to create situations where your right and your left brain are talking to each other. So when you're approaching a trade or when you're in the middle of a trade, you're already in a whole brain state. The other aspect of it is we learn so many patterns from everyone that we've ever met since we were born, especially between the ages of 0 and 8. We get provided with all of our survival skills and all of our subconscious programming from our parents, our family, our friends. So if any of those don't match up with what you're trying to accomplish, they can sabotage you and you don't even know it's happening. And that's the scary bit. So by coming in and really looking at what programs you're running and then taking those programs, putting them into a whole brain state where your, I guess you could call it your desires and your intentions are matched with your automatic responses, then all of a sudden the stress goes down, the decisions become clearer, they become more focused, and all around everything becomes smoother, lighter, and easier.
So how does one get to that state? Obviously, bearing in mind a lot of it is subconscious. So
Yeah.
you're not actually aware that you're doing that. How can our viewers get into that position?
Well, I think a particular warning sign is, especially for traders, if when you're trading, do you repeat the same errors? Do you repeat the same problems and look for a reason as to why those problems are happening? Do you always get out of your trade too fast? Are you afraid to let it run? Do you always get into a trade too early and jump the gun? Or do you forget to actually take your profits because you get super excited that the trade's going your way? And instead of closing it, you let it run, and then all of a sudden a winner turns into a loser. If you're seeing that repeating itself over and over again, then there is something there that in your subconscious is running as a program. And you just may not have noticed it because another part of your subconscious programming is to blame the market or blame your trading method or blame your plan. And none of that is helpful. What's helpful is to really sit down and look at what's happening, decide whether or not you're seeing a pattern, and then take action for that. Some of the things that I do, for example, work with whole brain integration. So we can take a stressful situation, you'll replay it, and while you're replaying it, we're in a whole brain position or we're doing something that can then reprogram it and just make sure that in that situation, in that particular stress, in that memory, next time you see it, you'll recognize it and go into a whole brain state.
So I'm thinking now, and certainly for viewers, if they're not already doing this, it's very easy to get the quantitative information of trading.
Yes.
Your P&L,
Yeah.
and timings, etc. Would you say it's important to also record qualitative information, how you felt at the time of the trade, the reason you lost, the reason you made profit, just so you've got a record of, well, there's a story behind every trade.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, one of my favorite trading books, he's got 4 is Bill Williams, and Bill Williams really delves into how you should be monitoring yourself from a mental game point of view. And one of the things he suggests is writing morning papers, which is just 3 pages of a brain dump in the morning. And that can go over your past trades, that could go anything that's going through, it could be a stream of consciousness. But doing that and then journaling at the end of the day to just look at the patterns, because you can bring up your P&L, you can actually look at every single trade that you've done and then bring up the charts and match them and say, why did I do this here when actually the signal said I should have waited for another 15-minute bar, another 2-hour bar to come up? Why did I do that? What was I feeling? And if you can identify that, then that's brilliant.
Okay, and finally for our viewers, if there's one takeaway from this interview, what would it be? What would you say to our viewers?
One takeaway, one thing that you can do, the takeaway would definitely be start journaling. But if you can't remember it and you're feeling stress while you're sitting there, you don't have to go off and find a place to meditate. Do a very, very simple breathing exercise, which is you close your eyes, put your fingertips right where your heart is, and then just imagine every breath in, you're sending energy from your heart to your brain, and every breath out, you're sending energy from your brain to your heart. You can visualize it any way you want. It could be blue energy, it could be red energy, it could be anything you want. But just get into that. Do that for 2 minutes. All of a sudden, your brain will be clear. and you're able to go back to your plan and sit there, and all of those emotions, all of that stress will be out of your way, at least for a short time. So you can look at it and say, what does my plan say to do next, instead of allowing fear or anxiety or stress to dictate your decisions.
Super. Well, thank you very much for coming on today, Sean. Been an absolute stress-free pleasure, and hopefully investors and viewers can learn a lot from that.
Thank you very much, Matt. It was really a pleasure to be here.